Think about the last person you knew who had a dream. Not a wish, not a passing fantasy that flickered in the quiet of a Sunday afternoon and was gone by Monday morning. A real dream, the kind that lived in the chest like a second heartbeat, the kind that showed up uninvited at 2 in the morning and refused to leave, the kind that made ordinary life feel like a borrowed coat, something that fit technically, but never quite felt like yours. Now, think about what happened to that dream. Did they build it? Did they chase it past the point of comfort, past the point of certainty, past the point where the road was lit and the outcome was guaranteed? Or did they do what most people do? Did they fold it carefully, tuck it away in the drawer of someday, and return to the life that the world had already prepared for them? Most people die with their empire still inside them, not because they lacked the intelligence, not because the world was too cruel, or the timing was too wrong, or the circumstances were too heavy, but because somewhere between the dream and the doing, they made a trade. They traded the discomfort of building for the comfort of imagining. They traded the risk of failure for the safety of never having truly tried. And slowly, year by year, the empire that was always meant to be built in the world was buried instead inside the silence of a life half-lived. Napoleon Hill spent 20 years walking through the lives of the most successful human beings who ever drew breath on this continent. He sat with Carnegie when Carnegie's steel empire was still the largest in human history. He studied Edison through failure after failure, through laboratories that burned and partnerships that collapsed and decades of work that the world dismissed as the obsession of a madman. He examined the lives of men who arrived at greatness from the depths of poverty, from the wreckage of failure, from backgrounds so ordinary that their eventual achievements seemed, to the outside world, like miracles. They were not miracles. They were choices. Repeated, deliberate, unglamorous choices made in private before anyone was watching, before the outcome was visible, before the world had any reason to applaud. And the single most devastating thing Hill discovered, the discovery that haunts this work and should haunt every person who reads it, is not that greatness is rare. It is that greatness is common, that the seed of empire exists inside almost every human being who has ever lived, and that most of them, most of us, go to our graves without ever planting it. This is the truth that the world will not tell you, not because the world is cruel, but because the world is busy, because the world is comfortable, because the world has a system, a salary, a schedule, a set of expectations, and that system works perfectly so long as you never ask whether it was built for you or built for someone else. Today, you are going to ask. There is a kind of death that happens before the body fails. It is not dramatic. It does not arrive with ceremony or announcement. It creeps in slowly, in the years after the dream first forms, in the quiet accumulation of reasons why now is not the right time. It wears the face of responsibility. It speaks in the language of practicality. It sounds from the outside like wisdom, and from the inside like surrender dressed in reasonable clothes. Hill called it the theft of the definite major purpose. When a human being loses their definite major purpose, that specific, burning, crystalline vision of what they are meant to build, they do not become nothing. They become something far more tragic. They become functional. They move through the world with efficiency and competence and a kind of cheerful resignation that the people around them mistake for contentment. They pay their bills, they attend their meetings, they make their contributions, and somewhere beneath all of it, sealed in a compartment they have learned not to open, the empire waits, waits, and waits, and waits. Andrew Carnegie was born in a one-room weaver's cottage in Dunfermline, Scotland. His family had nothing. When they immigrated to America, Carnegie was 13 years old and immediately went to work in a cotton factory for $1.20 a week. He delivered telegrams. He taught himself Morse code by staying late, long after his shift ended, practicing in the dark. He read every book he could find, borrowing them because he could not afford to buy them. And he carried inside him, from his earliest years, a picture of what he intended to build that was so clear, so detailed, so consuming, that poverty was not a condition he lived in. It was simply a circumstance he was passing through on the way to something else. Carnegie did not become Carnegie because he was lucky. He became Carnegie because he never once allowed the empire inside him to be buried by the weight of his circumstances. He kept the picture alive. He kept returning to it, feeding it, protecting it from the voices, both internal and external, that said it was too large, too unreasonable, too far from where he currently stood. The distance between where you are and where your empire exists is not the obstacle. The obstacle is whether you believe the distance is crossable. Because here is what Hill understood, what Carnegie understood, what every empire builder in history has understood at the level of bone. The world does not respond to your position, it responds to your conviction. It does not open doors for the qualified, it opens doors for the committed. And commitment is not a feeling, it is not the electricity of inspiration on a good morning. Commitment is the decision you make on the bad mornings, the gray, uncertain, loveless mornings when the dream feels distant and the doubt feels near, to show up anyway. That decision, made consistently over time, is the entire difference. Let us talk about what the empire actually is. Because most people have been sold a counterfeit version of this idea, and the counterfeit has cost them everything. The empire is not a number in a bank account. It is not a title on a business card, or a follower count on a platform, or a square footage of office space. These things may be evidence of an empire. They are not the empire itself. The empire is the full expression of what you were built to contribute. Every human being arrives in this world with a specific constellation of gifts, a combination of talent, temperament, curiosity, and passion that is, in the truest sense, unrepeatable. No one who has ever lived or who will ever live carries exactly the same combination that you carry. This is not poetry. This is the observable reality of human individuality, and it has a profound implication that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. If you do not build what only you can build, it does not get built. the thing you are capable of creating, the problem you are uniquely positioned to solve, the work that sits at the intersection of your deepest passion and your sharpest skill. If you do not bring it into the world goes without it. Not dramatically, not in a way the world will necessarily notice, but the absence is real, the gap exists, and you feel it. Not always consciously, but in the low-grade restlessness, the persistent sense that something is unfinished, the feeling on Sunday evenings that the week ahead is somehow less than what your life was meant to contain. That feeling is not a malfunction, it is a compass. Hill called it the voice of infinite intelligence, the deep, persistent signal from the part of you that knows what you are here to do, even when every external voice is telling you to be reasonable. Most people learn to silence it. They mistake its persistence for dissatisfaction. They medicate the restlessness with distraction, with consumption, with noise, with the endless scroll of other people's lives, and they call this contentment. It is not contentment. It is anesthesia. Walt Disney was fired from the Kansas City Star in 1919. His editor told him he lacked imagination. Disney went on to file for bankruptcy twice, to have his first successful cartoon character stolen from him by a distributor, to be told by every major bank in California that his idea for a theme park was financially absurd. Through all of it, through every humiliation, every institutional rejection, every season of genuine poverty, he held inside him a picture so vivid, so complete, so alive, that the external failures never reached the core of it. He did not hope for Disneyland. He did not wish for it. He saw it, in his mind, in full color, years before a single brick was laid, and that internal vision was more real to him than the skepticism of every banker and editor and investor who looked at him and saw only a dreamer with insufficient capital and an unreasonable imagination. Your empire lives in that same place, in the vision that is more real to you than the doubt, in the picture you return to, not because the world has validated it, but because something deeper than validation is driving you toward it. The question is not whether the vision is there, it is whether you are willing to protect it. Protection is an act of discipline. Not the kind of discipline that gets talked about in productivity circles, the cold showers and the 5 a.m. alarms, and the optimization of every hour into units of maximum output. That is performance. Performance is useful, but it is not discipline. Discipline is the internal governance of your attention. It is the daily practice of returning your focus to what matters, when the world, which is always, ceaselessly, overwhelmingly loud, is pulling it toward what is urgent, what is entertaining, what is comfortable, what is other people's vision of what your life should look like. Every empire that has ever been built was built in the gap between what demanded attention and what deserved it. Edison worked through the night, not because he was driven by suffering, but because the work, the actual, physical, experimental work of solving problems that had never been solved before, was more alive to him than sleep. His discipline was not the discipline of restriction, it was the discipline of devotion. He was so utterly given to the purpose that everything else, the comfort, the recognition, the financial security, was simply irrelevant to the pursuit. This is the quality that Hill called the burning desire, and it is profoundly misunderstood. People hear burning desire, and they think of motivation. They think of the feeling, the elevated heart rate, the clarity, the sense of possibility that comes on a good day when the vision is close and the path is clear. They want to bottle that feeling and carry it everywhere. And when the feeling fades, as feelings always do, they conclude that the desire has faded with it. But the burning desire is not a feeling. It is a decision that has been made so deeply, so completely, so finally, that it has become structural. It lives below emotion. It persists through the seasons, through the winters of doubt and the autumns of disappointment, and the long gray stretches of unrewarded effort that every empire builder must traverse before the world begins to reflect what the mind has long already built. The men and women who build empires are not the ones who feel the most inspired. They are the ones who have decided, at a level that feelings cannot reach, that the vision is non-negotiable. Lincoln decided. In the middle of a war that killed 600,000 people, in the grip of a depression so profound that those close to him feared for his life, surrounded by advisers who urged compromise and newspapers that called him a tyrant and a fool, Lincoln held the vision. Not because he felt courageous, often he did not, but because the decision had been made, and the decision was deeper than courage, deeper than feeling, deeper than circumstance. You must make that decision. Not the decision to try, or the decision to pursue when conditions are favorable, or the decision to revisit the dream when the current obligations have been met. The final, irreversible, burning decision that the empire inside you will not die with you.
There is a conversation that happens in the lives of every empire builder, usually more than once, that the motivational world almost never talks about. It is the conversation with the person who loves you, who knows you, who has watched you struggle, and who, from a place of genuine care, asks you to be realistic. This conversation is more dangerous than any external enemy, more costly than any market crash or failed partnership or mistimed launch, because it comes from inside the circle of trust, and it carries the weight of relationship, and it genuinely sounds like wisdom. Be realistic. Protect what you have. The odds are against you. People like us don't build things like that. People like us. Carnegie was a Scottish immigrant child working a cotton factory at 13. Ford was a farm boy with no formal education, whose first 2 automobile companies failed before the third one changed the world. Oprah Winfrey was told by a producer early in her career that she was unfit for television. These were not people who had every advantage. They were people who refused, at the deepest level of their identity, to accept the ceiling that other people's realities were trying to impose on their own. The ceiling is not real. It is made of consensus, the accumulated agreement of people who stopped before you, who decided the wall was too thick, who concluded that the empire was a dream for other people. And consensus, however widely shared, is not truth. It is just a collection of individual surrenders that have been mistaken for a law of nature. Your empire does not care about consensus. It does not care about statistics or averages or what is typical for someone with your background and your resources and your starting point. It cares only about one thing: whether you are willing to do consistently and without guarantee of recognition what the vision demands of you.
Adaptability is part of that demand. Hill understood this in a way that is rarely discussed. The burning desire is fixed, the vision, the destination, the thing you are building, but the path is not fixed. The path is fluid, responsive, alive. Every obstacle you encounter is not a sign that the vision was wrong. It is information about which route is currently available, and it requires not abandonment, but navigation. The river does not stop flowing when it meets a boulder. It finds the way around. It loses no force, no direction, no commitment to the sea. It simply adjusts its path, calmly and completely, without drama, without the boulder's permission, without waiting for the boulder to move. This is the posture of the empire builder in the face of adversity. Not brittle optimism that shatters at the first sign of difficulty, not stubborn attachment to a single path, but the unshakable commitment to the destination, combined with the fluid intelligence to find whatever route the current landscape allows.
We are almost at the end of this, and I want you to sit with something, not as a concept, not as an inspiring thought to carry through the week, but as a reality that you feel in the full weight of what it means. Somewhere inside you, right now, there is an empire. Not a fantasy, not an ego-driven illusion of grandeur, an actual, specific, real contribution that you and only you are positioned to make. A business, a work, a mission, an idea, a movement that exists right now only as potential, as pressure, as the low hum of something unbuilt beneath the surface of your daily life. And the clock is running. Not as a threat, not as a reason for panic, but as the simple, sober truth that time is the one resource that does not replenish, that the years available to you for building are finite, and that every year spent living below the level of your empire is a year that cannot be reclaimed. Hill documented the lives of men who woke up to this truth at 40, at 50, at 60, and built anyway, who decided in the second half of their lives that it was not too late, that the empire had waited patiently inside them long enough, and that whatever years remained would be given to it fully. It is never too late to begin, but it is always urgent. Because the cost of waiting is not just the empire unbuilt, it is the person you do not become in the building of it. It is the clarity you do not develop, the resilience you do not forge, the depth of purpose you do not discover, all of which are only available on the other side of the decision to build. You were not put here to manage your potential. You were put here to release it. Every morning that you wake up and choose the empire over the excuse, that is a deposit in the account of your legacy. Every hour you spend building before the world gives you permission, that is compound interest on a future that has not yet arrived, but is becoming more real with every committed action. The men who changed this world did not wait for the world to change first. They changed themselves, their beliefs, their habits, their disciplines, their relationships, their daily devotion to the vision, and the world always and inevitably followed. This is not inspiration. This is a law. The inner world always, always precedes the outer world. The empire inside always comes before the empire outside. And the moment you commit, fully, finally, without the exit clause of unless it gets too hard, the moment that decision is made at the level where decisions actually change lives, the building has already begun.
Most people die with their empire still inside them. They die with the book unwritten and the business unlaunched, and the conversation not started, and the risk not taken. They die with the vision intact and the courage unused. They die full of potential that was never converted, full of desire that was never acted on, full of empire that never left the interior to become something the world could stand in and be changed by. You are not most people. You are reading these words because something in you has refused to be quiet, because the empire inside you has been knocking on the walls of your comfort, on the door of your routine, on the ceiling of the life you have built so far, and you have heard it. Maybe you have not answered. Maybe you have opened the door a crack and then closed it again when the cold air of uncertainty came rushing in, but you have heard it. Answer it. Not when the conditions are perfect, not when the fear has passed, because the fear does not pass, it simply becomes less relevant than the calling. Not when you feel ready, because readiness is a myth that the empire afraid tell themselves to justify the waiting. Answer it now, with the resources you have, from the place where you stand, with the imperfect plan and the incomplete knowledge and the uncertainty that is not a problem to be solved, but a companion to be accepted on every road worth traveling. The empire does not need you to be ready. It needs you to begin. And when you begin, when you make the decision and take the first step and commit the first hour and do the first hard thing in the direction of the vision, something shifts, not dramatically, not with trumpets or signs or the immediate validation of the world, but something shifts deep in the architecture of who you are. And the person you are becoming is already different from the person who hesitated. Hill knew this. Carnegie knew it. Edison knew it. Every man and woman who built something from nothing and left the world larger than they found it knew it. The empire does not begin with capital or connections or perfect conditions. It begins with a decision. Make it. The world is waiting for what only you can build. And you, the real you, the version of you that exists at the level of your deepest potential, you have been waiting long enough.